Good afternoon, everyone. There's a couple things I want to cover right off the top, and then we'll get into some other stuff. I've had a lot of requests for a mug shot or a picture of Mr. Sowell, the gentleman that was arrested last night from the hardware store. Anybody who needs a mug shot of him or would like to have one anyway can pick one up at the sheriff's office in Golden. There should be plenty of copies there already for anyone who needs one. There's two parking lots on the west side of the sheriff's office. There's an upper lot and a lower lot. Make sure you're in the lower lot. There's a lobby off of that lower lot to go in, and there should be an officer there that'll have copies of his mugshot. We're going to have the next news conference occur Monday at 2 p.m. We won't have one tomorrow or Sunday. Sounds like the investigators, most of them are going to take the day off tomorrow and Sunday, so we probably won't be around for the weekend for you.
Will your telephone hotline, your regular telephone line, have somebody answering?
The 932 number? I think they're in.
Like the library people will be tomorrow.
Okay, tomorrow for sure. Not sure about Sunday, I'm told. Jeffco Public Schools was here at 1, right? Did they advise everybody about the backpack situation and all of that? Okay. All right. A couple of things from a meeting I was in a little earlier. There still is no indication of any third suspect inside the school during the shootings. As far as the Brooks-Brown report that we've been talking about, I have a little statement to read here, and then we'll cover some of that. On the 18th of March in 1998, the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office took a suspicious incident report from Randy Brooks Brown. In this report, Mr. Brown stated that his son, Brooks Brown, had received threats from Eric Harris. These threats were reported to have been contained on Eric Harris's web page. Mr. Brown stated during the report that he desired to remain anonymous and that due to the concerns of his son's safety, he did not wish Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold, who were also mentioned on the report, to have knowledge of the report. In other words, Mr. Brown did not want either of those two parties contacted. With the report was submitted 10 pages of internet info in which the threats were contained. Investigator John Healy attempted to access the website to no avail. The website addresses provided by the Browns were not online. Without heading information, it could not be determined that the information had in fact come from Eric Harris. Because of the nature of the threat that explosives and computers were used, the report was forwarded to the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office Investigations Division for informational purposes. Investigators completed an NCIC, CCIC, or computer clearance check on Eric Harris on April 2nd, 1999. Additionally, attempts were made to determine if any reports of found pipe bombs could be linked to the report, none of which could be. I should back up. The date, that should be April 2nd of 1998. On April 11th of 1998, Judy Brown phoned in a supplemental report that her son had received an additional email message that outlined threats. Mrs. Brown stated that her son, Brooks Brown, tried to respond to the sender, but the sender was unknown. Additionally, she reported that her son had accidentally removed the email messages. That was on April 11th of 98. Investigator John Hicks reviewed the April 11th report and later spoke with either Mr. or Mrs. Brown. Hicks saw no computer crime violation and referred them to the district attorney's office for clarification of legal questions. Because of the request of Mr. Brown, neither he nor his son or Harris or Klebold were contacted. Without the ability to speak to a victim or positively identify a suspect, elements of a crime could not be established. The investigators have maintained the report as an open lead since it was originally reported. School Resource Officer Deputy Neil Gardner was briefed as to the information by Investigator Mike Guerrera. Deputy Gardner, with his knowledge, occasionally engaged Harris and Klebold, along with several of their friends and associates, in light conversation. Deputy Gardner made no observations of inappropriate behavior and has stated that both Harris and Klebold treated him with appropriate respect. It is the position of the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department that, in light of the information available at the time, reasonable action was taken with all reports received from the Brown family. Additionally, through our investigation, we have learned that actually Brooks Brown and Eric Harris became pretty good friends earlier this year. Apparently they were in at least one class together at school and became pretty good friends. Brooks Brown also reports that on the day of the incident, he was told by Eric Harris to get out of here because I like you. As we said, there was no, at the time anyway, no crime. The elements of a crime did not occur. We felt like there was not sufficient evidence to prosecute anyone or charge anyone with anything. And I can have the district attorney, Dave Thomas, address some of the legal issues. I also have Lieutenant John Kickbush here to answer some of your questions about procedural matters in the investigations unit. Let me start. We'll start with Dave. With Kickbush? John, they want you first. Okay. This is Lieutenant John Kickbush from the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office.
Please spell your name.
Kiekbusch. Did you get that, Steve?
I've got it.
Thank you.
Are you waiting for questions here?
Yes, I am.
Well, let me ask you this. Was the district attorney's office contacted to see if there was any kind of prosecution underway of Eric Harris of any crime at the time the Browns had filed their report?
Ordinarily, we wouldn't contact the district attorney's office to verify that other crimes had been filed or so on in a case like this. It was assigned as a suspicious incident and not even as a crime. So it's really to Detective Guerra's credit that he took the initiative and continued as far as he did with this investigation. One of the things that the investigators routinely do is to do a query on our computer, both for the Sheriff's Department and through the state CCIC, NCIC system, on any individuals that are under investigation. It's just part of the routine background that they do. But a specific call to the district attorney, that would not be ordinarily done unless there was some information that would indicate that that was necessary.
Would there not have been a check to see if there was any kind of prosecution underway of these kids, if they had been involved in a crime that you weren't aware of?
That would have shown up on one of the routine checks that we did. If you're referring to the charges that were filed against them, I believe this incident occurred before that incident involving the vehicle.
You said investigators went into a website and didn't find anything where the address was not correct. Can you explain that, exactly how that works?
That's correct. We have, we're very fortunate. We have two investigators, one of whom, Investigator Healy, just completed a master's degree in computer science. Investigator Hicks also has a degree in computer science, and they have a great deal of technical ability, which serves us well. Both of them were involved in this case, as has been indicated. The information that was provided did not carry an appropriate heading. So it was difficult to determine what the website was, and based on the information that was provided by the Brown family, Investigator Healy was unable to locate the website that had been referred to, the website that had been used to provide the documents that were furnished by the Brown family.
But then you believe it was a real website, though, right?
Absolutely.
And the documents were real. So.
They appeared to be.
Were the documents turned over to the DA's office?
No, they were not turned over to the DA's office because we could not get to the point where there was a crime that could be identified.
Had you been able to find it on the web, would that have changed the status or the nature of your procedure? Would anything have happened differently had your investigators found it on the web?
I think had they found additional information on the web, it might have gone differently, but you can put an awful lot of information on the web and it doesn't constitute a crime. It's a First Amendment issue. Dave will certainly comment on that.
Who at the school was notified that a complaint had been filed against Eric Harris? Clearly the Deputy Gardner knew about it because at the bottom of the complaint, his name is there as copy sent to. So who at the school, did he tell anyone at the school that his complaint had been filed? Did the school investigate any of the allegations that were made against Harris, that he allegedly was detonating bombs and had threatened to kill man's people?
Deputy Gardner shared the information that was in our offense report or our suspicious incident report with one of the deans at the school. So the school had been provided that information, at least in a general sense, by Deputy Gardner.
And did the school take any action?
That I don't know.
Who did he go to?
I don't know.
Sir, I'm not sure if I understand. Are you saying that you think that you followed up as best you can, and do you think that maybe there's more second guessing going on in the media than it is of investigative interest to you guys at this point?
Absolutely. I mean, we got some information about some kids that didn't get along. Some information was provided on a web page that we could not verify. Kids in virtually every high school in the country have differences and at times don't get along. It's not that
typical of kids not getting along.
Well, I think it's kind of an aggravated not getting along, given the language that that was apparently on this website. But I think the point is that we had a family that desired to remain anonymous. They did not want to create more problems for their child. And given those parameters, I think our investigators still took this to a reasonable conclusion. They took it as far as they could with the information. They were unable to come up with a crime that we could take over to the district attorney's office.
Just one question on this. If the thing I don't understand about this is you're saying that they sent you copies of the webpage and that you couldn't find this online.
Right.
So no one called them back and said, you know, there's no header here. Can you tell us, please, what the, because obviously they looked it up. Why would no one call them back and say, well, you know, what is the website here because it's not listed?
I can't answer that. There was apparently not a call back when that first information came in, and that's unfortunate. I think the officers were trying to take it as far as they could. Perhaps given the fact that the Brown family indicated they wanted to remain anonymous, that might be another reason they didn't do it. Let me say that Investigator Guerra at the time had probably 6 or 8 months in the division. So even though he had an experienced supervisor who was monitoring this investigation, he was not a particularly seasoned investigator. And
even if they had found it, let's say you found the website and you know what it says because they printed out the pages. Right. What crime could you have found against them if you say I'm going to kill somebody anyway?
That's exactly the point. You
can only use this after the fact. If they do blow it up, you can say, okay, you did this, we stopped.
Well, what about the other materials in it? He talked about testing pipe bombs. He talked about attacking houses with BB guns and fireworks. What about that?
If you look at the information that was provided to us, some of it is quite outlandish. When an individual on a website talks about having exploded numerous bombs and kills numerous people, obviously that's not happening. So we're looking at it as someone's fantasy, but nonetheless, we're still pursuing it to see if there's any substance there. But we compared that information against explosive pipe bomb devices that had been recovered in the county. There was nothing to match up there. And obviously, we were not investigating numerous unsolved homicides.
The Browns claimed that they made numerous phone calls following up that were not returned by people in your office.
I have no way of substantiating that. I know that I believe it was on the 11th when there was a follow-up phone call from the Browns. There was discussion between the patrol deputy and Investigator Hicks. And again, this information was reviewed. The determination was made that there was no criminal violation. And Investigator Hicks at that time reports that he phoned either Mr. or Mrs. Brown, spoke briefly with them, explained that there was no apparent criminal violation, and referred them to the district attorney's office for clarification of any other legal questions that they might have had.
Lieutenant, if you get a website
or information about such a website today, maintained by another kid? What would you do?
In the investigative team task force that we've organized, we have a group of, I believe, 5 detectives and an FBI supervisor whose sole responsibility is to try to track down these sorts of threats. They've been out at the schools in the area where we've had bomb threats. They've worked and helped the local agencies to try to resolve those issues. We have another group of, I think, 4 detectives and a supervisor. This is a support that we're getting, including our people, the FBI and CBI, computer crime specialists, and they're looking at these same issues. If we get a threat that comes in on a web page or comes in on email, and believe me, we've already seen any number of them, we're taking them seriously. We're trying to run these things down. We're notifying other jurisdictions to ensure that we don't have another incident like this.
Lieutenant, did the Brooks made a complaint to the deputy sheriff at the school, or did they go to the sheriff's office 1 and 2? Can we get a copy of the Brooks report?
The Brooks report will be made available. Steve will address it.
Okay.
How?
And did
Where?
the Brooks
I'll get to it. I'll get to it.
Okay, and did the Brooks make a complaint to the deputy sheriff at the school, or did they go to the sheriff's office? Who was the first?
It went to a deputy other than the school deputy.
It wasn't him. He wasn't
No.
the first person.
But he was advised after that report went through investigation.
Lieutenant, when you say that you take these threats seriously now, that you track them down, are you saying your procedures have changed from the time last year when you received a specific threat involving a specific individual, naming a specific potential victim?
I wouldn't say that they've changed significantly. Threats like this have come in on occasion. We've certainly looked at them. We've tried to run them back. At this point, since the attack on Columbine School, we've had many of these threats, and that's why we have these 2 teams in place to address those issues. Again, I would stress this did not come through as a crime report. We assigned about 5,000 felony reports in the investigation division last year. This came through as an incident. The officer who took the report and subsequent review by investigation could not identify a specific crime to move forward with.
If you've been able to identify the source of the threat, if you had been able to go to AOL and determine the identity of the person who put up the threat on the website, would that have changed the nature of your investigation?
It could have, and in hindsight, it would have been nice. But this was one of any number of cases that come through. It was an incident. We had the Brown family asking for anonymity. There were any number of reasons why this wasn't pursued more forcefully.
Lieutenant, you said, we were investigating this more thoroughly to stop this attack from happening.
I don't believe so.
Lieutenant, did you have other cases, say, last year of teams making and detonating pipe bombs, other than just actually having the way to do it on the web page, but actually making and detonating pipe bombs?
The bomb squad responded to about 60 calls last year, and approximately 20 plus involved pipe bombs. So far as I know, we were not able to identify any suspects in any of those cases or bring charges in any of those cases.
Is it illegal to post a bomb threat on the internet?
Not that we can tell. So far as we know, you can pretty much say what you want to say on the internet.
You said April 2nd you did the NCIC report. The NCIC check was April 2nd?
I believe it was.
Yeah. Wasn't the car break-in in March of '98? Wasn't that, these were fairly coincidental, and it was after.
Okay.
January.
Dave has got that
January?
detail.
Okay, so did that car break-in show up on the NCIC report, and did anything else show up on
Dave's
the NCIC report? I don't think so.
I'll have Dave address that here in just a minute.
So, Lieutenant, if I understand correctly, you've danced around this. You believe that you did everything that was appropriate at the time. Now, knowing what we know now, if you got the exact same report that you got from the Browns today, would you treat it in the exact same manner? Would you treat it any differently than the way you treated it in '98?
I think we've learned a lesson. And again, I would stress that at that time, I think everything that we did with that case, it showed initiative by the investigator, and it was reasonable within the workload and the policies of the department. We all learned a lesson on the 20th of April. And I think part of that is that we need to take these things in a more serious fashion. And we have a structure with the task force, and we'll be looking at our procedures in the Sheriff's Department to ensure that we can try to take this information a little bit further.
And do you know which dean of the school this report was shared with?
No, I don't, sir.
Did Deputy Gardner do anything besides engage them in their friends' educational life conversations?
He told one of the deans at the school, and he monitored the situation with watching them, paying attention to what they were doing. You know, there's 1,800 kids. These are a couple that I need to keep a little extra eye on, plus engaging them in conversation.
Did the group say that these kids were actually making and detonating bombs? Is that something that you guys knew and could confirm somehow?
Brooks did. I don't believe that Brooks said that, but there was reference in the computer documentation that was provided where the person who wrote that talked about exploding bombs.
Okay, so the Brooks actually never saw them or never heard that they were actually doing it?
No, we did not have that information.
Lieutenant, in an interview on Monday, Deputy Gardner was asked if he was aware of the Brooks complaint. He said he was not. He said, I was not aware of that. He said he had some knowledge the investigation division had looked into the pipe bomb thing, but he wasn't sure of it. He said, I was not alerted to this. Can you explain that discrepancy?
No, I can't. I know that in the subsequent conversations, he's indicated that there was communication. In fact, it's noted on the report that it was forwarded to him. I think if you look at the traumatic incident that Deputy Gardner went through, I would question how many of us would remember the details of an incident like that a year ago.
But just because the family...
I might clarify just a little bit on that. I talked to Neil Gardner this morning, and he told me that he was aware of the information, but that he did not receive a copy of the report, is the way he told me.
What is the status of the gentleman that was arrested yesterday? Is he free on bond? Has he been charged?
It's my understanding that he has bonded out. I'm sorry. Let me bring up Dave Thomas, the district attorney, here for a few questions.
Has he been charged with anything?
Who's he talking about? Mr. Soule, that was arrested last night.
Mr. Soule, Mr. Soule was charged by a misdemeanor warrant with false reporting. I'm not going to give you the street address.
D.A. Thomas, if we could for a moment to discuss the videotape that's been confirmed by the sheriff that shows Dylan and Eric involved with some target practice. Can you describe this tape and whether they were using the guns in this tape that might have been used in the shootings and the whatever you know about this tape?
I have not reviewed the tape. I have not seen the tape. And the contents of that tape in detail have not been provided to me at this stage, so I'm not going to talk about it.
But you haven't identified any other people on this tape that might help you in this investigation?
I haven't.
Do you have a theory of death of the gunman now? You have your ballistics report downwards by this point. Do you have a theory of death on the two gunmen?
No different than has been previously reported, that they appear to be consistent with self-inflicted gunshot wounds. Is that I haven't seen any ballistics reports.
So you're saying they were both self-inflicted gunshot wounds?
That's what my understanding was from the coroner's office, was that they were consistent with self-inflicted gunshot wounds. We do not have forensics back, as far as I know, on the firearms. As you know, there have been, by this time, probably, there were 2,000 pieces of evidence submitted last time, probably a week ago, and I would guess it's probably more like 3,000 at this point, and that's a very time-consuming process. So,
but Steve, at some point you had said that you left open the possibility that it could have been a murder-suicide. So,
certainly.
So that possibility is open. Okay.
Yeah,
Mr. Thomas,
sure.
do you hope that these two cases, the hardware store employee and the woman arrested for the bomb threat, set an example or provide a warning for others as you do your investigation?
Well, I appreciate the question. I want to be real clear on this. These are two incidents. There have been numerous others, including one at my niece's elementary school. And as a parent, these are very disruptive and destructive activities. And if you, talking about the internet, if you get on the internet, unfortunately these kinds of incidents have occurred a lot of places. I got a call the other night about an incident in which I'm sure you're all aware of in the media in Tabor, Canada. I am greatly concerned about these things occurring, and there have been additional bomb threats. Let me just mention what occurred at Pomona High School as a result of this bomb scare. 1,820 kids were evacuated from the schools because under the circumstances under which we're working right now, and it kind of goes back to the questions you asked John Kickbush about would you do things differently today than you did a year ago. I suppose in hindsight, all of us do many things differently. a lot of bomb threats, historically, you kind of evaluate and you make a judgment about whether or not you're going to take affirmative action. I can tell you that most of these in the last week or so have resulted in evacuations of school and searches of school. This one resulted in the evacuation of 1,820 students. They were outside the school for at least 2 hours, while 5 members of the critical incident team, 2 sergeants from the Arvada Police Department, and 2 additional officers, the school resource officer and another officer from the Arvada Police Department, and with some assistance from the teaching staff, searched the entire building. I have no idea what the cost is on that, but I can tell you that it comes at a high price and a lot of disruption for kids' learning. And we are going to take a very hard line on this kind of activity. These 2 incidents were the one I related here and the one that related to Gary Sewell, have taken attention and resources away from this investigation. And we're going to be looking at how we deal with these cases, because they are very serious, and that's the message I want to send is this is a real serious situation.
What's the situation with the Tech 9 and tracing it and locating who got it into their hands?
Am I going to stand up here and predict something?
No, don't do that.
Okay.
Just tell us what
the intermediary.
Don't predict. Let's
You got
talk
an
about what's
intermediary,
actually
you got
happening.
Tracing the path from Larry Russell to the kids.
My understanding is that we have that investigation is still ongoing, but is coming to closure, and thanks to the cooperative efforts, as I've said earlier, of ATF and Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, particularly, I think there will be a resolution regarding that in the near future.
What do
You think
mean
the
by
middleman?
resolution in near future?
I think we will know how all of those transactions occurred, where they occurred, when they occurred, and between whom they occurred, and whether or not criminal charges are appropriate. And I think I'll be able to say something about that in the near future.
If that's
Tell
the
us about
why-
the trail of guns. Apparently went from this Sanders store in Illinois to Just Guns.
Right.
To, just the Russell sold it. You know when he sold it, the Tanner gun show that fall?
Yeah, I don't really want to go into details, but all of those connections that have been reported, I believe, have been accurate, and I believe that the investigators have been able to fill in even some of the blanks that are there, but we're at a pretty sensitive part of that aspect of it, and I think, like I said, I think it will come to closure very soon.
What is the
Yeah.
standard for doing the Harris parents and the Stewbold parents and their siblings and whatever they call
I will answer that. As I previously indicated in interviews, the Klebold family has indicated their willingness to cooperate with us, and those interviews have either taken place or are scheduled with the Klebold family. As I've indicated, I can't go into any detail about.
You can't say if you've talked to them yet?
Through intermediaries we have, but I don't want to say any more than that in terms of the status of those interviews, because those are very important to us. With the Harris family, it's a bit different. We have made contact with the attorney that represents the Harris family, and I believe it's been reported that he indicated that he had some other things that were pressing on his calendar, and we're trying to get back with him to indicate to him how important it is that we have contact and interview the Harrises. But they are represented by counsel, which is their prerogative, and so we need to work through
Who
counsel.
are their lawyers?
I don't give out names of counsel. Pardon? Yes.
What were the
As Mr. Kickbush says, I believe he said that there was a CCIC, NCIC check, and I think that's probably the case. I don't know, but the incident with the stolen car actually occurred in January of 1998, which preceded the report by the Browns, but I don't believe that the juvenile arrest would have appeared on NCIC, CCIC because of the level of offense. It was a felony, but it was they were class 4s, 5s, and my understanding in talking to my staff at the office is that only class 1, 2, and 3 felonies, when it relates to juveniles, are put on our automated computer system. So, but, there's another issue there when we're looking with 20/20 hindsight. Those are some of the issues that in the future I think we want to address about how we track people and how information is conveyed, because had that been on CCIC, NCIC, maybe, I don't know, it's very speculative, and I think it's very difficult and painful to look back and ask a lot of what-if questions about what could have prevented this, because I don't think anybody knows one way or the other. There was another question earlier on, and I think that came up about contact with the DA's office, because both Harris and Klebold were on our diversion program at the time the report was made by the Browns. I don't think, because of the nature of the report, that it would have made any difference if there had been a report to our office, because it didn't result in any criminal charges, and only criminal charges of that, criminal charges would have resulted in a review of that diversion program. There was an additional contact with a member of my office, which I think I've indicated in previous conversations. Judy Brown, who is the mother of Brooks Brown, and who made the supplemental report on April 11th, did contact an investigator in the DA's office by the name of Mike Heelan, Heylin. Mike Heelan, Heylin. He's a district attorney's investigator, a former member of the Lakewood Police Department. It was a call, I've discussed this with him, and he believes he received the call at home because he is related to Mrs. Brown. Mr. Heelan's wife and Judy Brown, I believe, are cousins. And it was in the nature of a personal phone call seeking advice about what do I do, this is going on. And he, in fact, told her that she needed to make a report and that to cooperate with the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. And then they had a discussion about some other aspects of this situation involving other things that maybe the Browns could do if they so chose, like restraining orders and things like that.
How did you determine that Gary Stoll's report was false, and do you have any idea why he made it?
Yes, the process that was used with regard to Gary Stoll's report was simply to take the information that he provided to law enforcement about the items that had allegedly been purchased by two individuals, and comparing that with the inventory and the sales at the retail outlet where he works, and when you compare the two, they don't match up. I believe that his reports publicly reported were that he sold 5 or more propane tanks of various sizes, and I don't remember all of it off the top of my head, but he related all that both publicly to you all and as well to law enforcement. Well, when you look at the sales records at the Hewitt Woods where he worked, there were no such sales.
D.A. Thomas.
Well, the conclusion is that the information he provided, our allegation is, and our complaint, is that it was false. All of it was false.
D.A. Thomas, are there any other people that are being sought in connection with supplying anything else in this attack?
Besides the firearms and the makings of the bombs, of course, we've talked about. No, not that I'm aware of.
And,
I can't think of anything.
And on the Tech 9, it's correct that you're looking at one person who facilitated the purchase and the person who actually had possession of the weapon that eventually got to Harrison Cleveland.
We're looking at the transfer of the weapon, and we're looking at anybody else that was associated with that transfer in terms of physical transfer or financial
and you've identified,
transfer.
you feel confident you've identified the universe of people involved in that transaction?
I think we have, yes.
If we take the NCIC,
okay.
The NCIC report, the Browns, showing off the pipe off the pizza place, the website, it's starting to look, tell me if it's a misperception on this side of the microphone. A lot of near misses. I mean, not necessarily putting blame, but just sort of an unfortunate series of events with, that their level of felony doesn't show up on NCIC.
That's law.
Okay.
I mean, that's not a correctable thing. That's the way the law is written.
What are the things? Are we seeing this wrong?
No, well, in terms of using 20/20 hindsight, I think that's probably an accurate observation. Is maybe one of the lessons that we learn is there are things that if we restructure our reporting systems and we use a lot more caution. I mean, you could say the same thing if we had metal detectors on all the schools, would it have prevented this? I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you over the last 2 weeks. There's a lot of people saying that's what we ought to be doing. But that's all 20/20 hindsight because there weren't metal detectors here. And we did not have those systems in place. It is sheer speculation that anything would have prevented this, even if some of these pieces of information that different people knew, if somehow we had a mechanism that would have brought all of those things to a focal point, would it have made a difference? I don't know. I really don't.
What did this begin in the parking lot? What would metal detectors do for an attack that begins in the parking lot?
Well, I don't want to go off on a philosophy about metal detectors.
So you raised the metal detector.
Well, I was using that as an example of what 20/20 hindsight does. It probably, in this case, it probably wouldn't have prevented it because they just would have run by the metal detectors with their guns. You're right.
Was the restraining order ever taken out?
I take one more question, then I have to go.
Was the restraining order ever taken out against Eric?
I'm not aware of any restraining orders, so thank you.
Anderson in the parking lot after the bombing.
Let me update everyone on a few numbers here. Lieutenant Kickbush advised me just a while ago that the actual number of pieces of evidence, I should say, is more like 8,000 to 10,000 right now. Also, the current number of leads that we're looking at are a little over 1,200 now, and about 900 of those have been assigned. I had some questions about the availability of that report.